December 4th, 1924. A printer at Waterloo & Sons, London, the firm that prints Portugal's official currency, receives a contract stamped with the Bank of Portugal's seal. It orders 200,000 banknotes, worth $250 million in today's money. Every note is real. Same paper, same ink, same plates the government uses. The printer doesn't question it and runs the press. But here's the thing. The Bank of Portugal never signed that contract. A 28-year-old convicted forger named Artur Alves Reis faked every document, every signature, every diplomatic letter, and convinced the most secure printing house in Europe to hand him a nation's wealth. He didn't counterfeit money, he made the government's own printer do it for him. The notes were indistinguishable from legitimate currency because they were legitimate currency. He bought banks, newspapers, entire blocks of Lisbon, and by the time Portugal's central bank noticed, so much duplicate cash flooded the economy, it nearly collapsed the entire country. How did a convicted criminal fool an entire nation's banking system? And what happened when the duplicate serial numbers finally surfaced? The first thing you learn about Artur Alves Reis is that he does not start by forging money. He starts by forging himself. Born in Lisbon to a modest family, his father worked as an undertaker who collapsed financially. The household runs on that quiet, grinding humiliation that comes from being one bill away from disaster every month, year after year. At 18, Reis marries into a better family, and you can almost hear the gears catching. Because the problem is not love. The problem is the room, going cold when he walks in. The invisible wall between people who own things and people who owe things. He enrolls in engineering studies at the Polytechnic, but it lasts about a year. Money, again, the gate that never stops closing. So Reis does what ambitious people do when every official door has a lock he cannot afford. He heads for a place where paperwork matters more than proof. He and his wife leave Portugal for Angola, chasing opportunity in a colony where everyone is new and everyone pretends they belong. Luanda in the early 1920s is a city of reinvention. European arrivals flash credentials the way gamblers flash chips. The thicker the stack, the fewer questions asked. But Angola has the same problem as everywhere. Jobs demand credentials, and Reis does not have them. So he manufactures them and creates a diploma from a Polytechnic School of Engineering at Oxford University, a department that does not exist, and stacks it with specialties like he is building an all-you-can-eat buffet of legitimacy. Then he gets it notarized, stamped, and authenticated. The power is not in the paper, it is in the chain. One person assumes the last person checked, and suddenly everyone is protecting a lie they did not invent. It works. He gets hired, and by every account he is competent at the actual work, which makes him the most dangerous kind of liar, the kind who makes you wonder if the paperwork was just catching up to the talent. But Reis does not stop at being employed. He escalates into corporate control schemes, draining money where money was never meant to move. The Ambaka railway affair ends with him arrested in Porto in 1924. Now he sits in a cell with ambition, a criminal record, and a society that will never let him be respectable again. But prison did not stop his mind. It forced him inward until he found a crack. And through that crack, he began to study how money worked in Portugal with no folklore or machinery. He reads everything he can access about the Bank of Portugal's operations and structure. He learns that the bank is a private institution holding an exclusive government license to issue notes, and that the system's real defenses are ledgers and procedures, not soldiers or vaults. He discovers that note production is outsourced to foreign security printers, meaning the physical creation of Portuguese currency happens hundreds of miles from Portuguese oversight. He reads a speech describing an irregular issuance of notes, a secret printing run conducted outside clean record keeping, and something clicks. If a bank can create money with paperwork, then money is just paperwork wearing a costume. The bank had no department specifically tasked with preventing duplicate note numbers, no built-in immune system for twins. The vulnerability was not in the engraving but in the administration. Reis does not decide, I will counterfeit. He decides something far colder. I will make them print it for me. He walked out of prison in August 1924, released on a technicality with nothing visible. But inside his head, the plan is already running. If money is protected by a signature, what happens when you steal the signature itself? And what kind of person do you need to convince a world-class printer to hand over the plates? Reis does not recruit a gang. He recruits a costume department. First, José Bandera, useful because respectability travels faster than cash. Then Karl Marang von Eiselvier, a Dutch businessman who can walk into boardrooms that criminals cannot touch. Then Adolf Hennies, a man with a shadowy past and a talent for never asking questions. Floating above them all is José's older brother, Antonio Bandera, whose political connections give the operation a faint smell of government. Reis tells each of them a different version of the plan, because lies work best when no one holds enough information to fact-check the other liar. The pitch is simple, elegant, and almost impossible to question. A confidential operation to print new banknotes for Angola, a special colonial issue that is politically sensitive and therefore must remain quiet, the kind of thing respectable people are told not to examine too closely. Then Reis reveals the real masterpiece, a forged contract on stamped government paper, papel selado, designed to make it appear that both the Bank of Portugal and the Angolan administration have authorized a massive printing run. He has it witnessed, then has the notary's signature authenticated at the British, French, and German consulates. 3 stamps, 3 institutions, 3 separate chances for someone to stop and ask whether any of it is real. But that is the power of official paper. A seal is not proof. It is permission to stop thinking. On December 4th, 1924, Marang walks into the offices of Waterloo & Sons in London, a firm on Great Winchester Street whose client list reads like a roll call of empires. Waterloo is a respected security printing firm that already holds the master plates for Portugal's Vasco da Gama 500 escudo banknote. That detail matters more than the ink. Waterloo is not being asked to imitate a note. They are being asked to repeat themselves. They have already printed massive runs of this exact design for the Bank of Portugal. So the request feels familiar, dangerously familiar. The paper stock is the same. The intaglio plates are the same. The only new element is the man placing the order. Inside the company, there is pressure to keep rivals out and revenue flowing. When Marang demands secrecy, it sounds like politics, not fraud. He adds the perfect detail. The notes will be overprinted Angola later, as if one extra word changes who has the right to order money. In Lisbon, Waterloo's representative, Henry Romer, starts getting an uncomfortable feeling. He raises concerns. He gets told, effectively, to shut up. A cable arrives with language designed to kill curiosity. The Bandera business must not be mentioned to anyone. Romer makes his doubts plain to Sir William Waterloo. Sir William keeps going anyway because by now the paperwork has done its job. It has made caution feel unnecessary and hesitation feel rude. A notary suggests one prudent step. Write directly to the bank's governor asking for confirmation. So Waterloo drafts a letter to Governor Inocencio Camacho Rodriguez. And then, because this story chooses its villains by geometry, Waterloo hands the letter to Marang's chain of intermediaries for delivery. According to Waterloo's records, there is no trace the bank ever received it. No receipt, no reply, just silence. Whether the letter was intercepted by Reis's intermediaries or genuinely lost in the Portuguese postal system remains unclear. What is certain is the result. A ghost letter that saves Reis's entire operation, the one safeguard that might have collapsed the scheme in its first month, simply vanishes between London and Lisbon. If you're enjoying this story and want more true accounts where the impossible isn't a metaphor, hit subscribe. Because what these men pull off next should not have worked. By January 6, 1925, Waterloo signs the agreement to print 200,500 escudo notes. They are not counterfeits. They are the real thing, made with the real plates, on the real presses, by the real people whose job is to make counterfeiting impossible. The first batches shipped, 20,000 notes, then 30,000, packed into trunks, walked through train stations, moved with diplomatic cover like luggage that cannot be searched. Reis is 28 years old, sitting on paper worth 100 million escudos in face value, nearly 1% of Portugal's nominal GDP. No alarm has sounded, because the alarm was designed to detect fakes, not miracles. There is a moment here where a normal criminal would vanish. Reis does the opposite. He takes the money and builds a stage. Because the next move is not spending. The next move is making the spending look like the country wanted it. But if Reis can launder 100 million escudos through a financial system designed to catch fraud, what does that tell you about the system itself? And how long can a man walk through locked doors before somebody notices the lock is broken? If you deposit a fortune in one place, people ask questions, so Reis spreads the money like a virus that understands quarantine. In Porto, he hires zangões, freelance dealers who take the new notes and buy hard currency, pounds and dollars, on the black market. The zangões do not know where the notes come from, and they do not need to. They are paid a commission and told to move fast. Then Reis does something beautifully boring. He instructs people to open accounts at suburban bank branches with the large notes, then withdraw in smaller denominations at head offices, converting suspicious paper into respectable paper through sheer administrative fatigue. The money enters the system as a 500 escudo and exits as a pile of small bills that nobody looks at twice. At one point, a bank manager grows suspicious and sends a note to the Bank of Portugal. The bank replies that the note is perfectly good, which is true, which is also the problem. Reis is not fighting security. He is hiding inside it, wearing legitimacy like a stolen uniform. In early 1925, he used the flood of cash to pay old debts and re-enter elite circles, because in every era, the fastest way to become respectable is to become liquid. But Reis still has a dangerous problem. Cash is evidence, so he needs an engine that turns evidence into investment. In June 1925, he charters his own institution, Bank of Angola and Metropole. Authorities demand a minimum capital of 20 million escudos, numbers designed to keep dreamers out. Reis treats the requirement like a familiar language. His real capital is sitting in trunks of unauthorized notes. The bank becomes a laundering machine that smiles. His unauthorized money does not just buy things now, it becomes credit, loans, it becomes legitimacy with letterhead. Businesses arrive for cheap loans, depositors arrive for the aura of stability, and nobody asks where the capital came from, because nobody wants to be the first person to suggest that a thriving bank might be made of smoke. Reis buys property, land, prestige. The undertaker's son moves through Lisbon like a king, and because arrogance is a drug, he takes another dose. On July 29, 1925, Meringue appears at Waterloo again with a new letter, another authorization from the bank's governor, requesting 380,000 more banknotes to complete the order. Sir William writes another letter to the governor, hands it off through the same shadowy chain, and again, it never arrives. A system built on paperwork cannot survive when the paperwork itself becomes the weapon. The strangest twist, the money injection is not immediately catastrophic. Researchers estimate the illicit notes at roughly 0.88% of Portugal's nominal GDP, and the country's macroeconomic picture in that window is complicated enough that historians still debate how much turbulence was Reis and how much was already baked in. But on the street, what people feel is liquidity, shops move inventory, loans happen. The machine turns. It is like watching someone pour gasoline into a sputtering engine and hearing it purr. Yes, it is arson. But the car is moving again. Reis could stop here, but he doesn't because he understands his real risk now. Discovery. All it takes is one clerk somewhere someday putting two identical serial numbers on the same desk. So he reaches for the only solution that would make him truly safe. He begins buying voting shares of the Bank of Portugal on the open stock exchange because the bank is private and private institutions can be owned. If he gains control, he can rewrite the ledgers. He can authorize his own notes retroactively. The crime would dissolve into policy. He needs 45,000 shares for a controlling stake. By mid-September, he holds thousands. By early November, estimates place him around 10,000, a quarter of the way to owning the institution that decides what money is. You are not watching a thief anymore. You are watching a man attempt to rewrite reality by acquiring the office that stamps reality. The audacity is almost architectural. Print fake permission to make real money, then use the real money to buy the authority that grants real permission. A perfect circle, closed forever, with Reis at the center. But what breaks Reis is not a detective. It is a newspaper asking the kind of question that turns money into a spotlight. Where did the capital come from? And how does a man answer that question when the truth would collapse the country's currency? In late 1925, the Lisbon daily O Século starts circling Reis's bank like a dog smelling meat. Journalists notice that the Bank of Angola and Metropole is lending at rates no new institution should be able to sustain. The reporting does not prove a crime. It does something more dangerous. It makes the public look, and once you look at money too closely, it stops behaving like money and starts behaving like a question. The paper asks the simplest version of that question. How does a new bank make enormous loans without needing deposits? That is not an accounting question. That is a reality question, where regulators get pulled in. The Bank of Portugal investigates and examines the 500 escudo notes piling up in suspicious places. Every time they examine one, it passes perfectly. The system is blind to its own breach because it is looking for the wrong kind of crime. Then, in the first week of December 1925, something minor happens in Porto. A jeweler and money changer is receiving payments from Reis's network in packets of 20 notes. The packets are not in numerical order. That sounds trivial until you remember how banks move money. A legitimate batch from a central bank tends to be sequential, like books on a shelf. A batch assembled by launderers looks like a shuffled deck. The cashier notices and tells someone connected to the local Bank of Portugal branch. By the close of business on Friday, December 4th, the bank's governor and his deputy have heard enough to dispatch a commission of inquiry to Porto. A judge, a bank inspector, a banknote expert, and a retired police official. A small team walking into a stack of paper that might end their careers. They search the branch and examine the Vasco da Gama notes. The expert reaches a conclusion that would make any counterfeiter weep. These notes were printed from the official plates. So, again, no proof, just dread. Then comes the break. On Saturday evening or Sunday morning, the commission identifies 4 pairs of notes bearing duplicate serial numbers. The trap was unavoidable. The bank's numbering system followed patterns tied to prior print runs, prefixes, letter codes, sequences built to organize hundreds of thousands of notes. Reis did not know the full system. He needed speed more than perfection. So he guessed. And once you guess inside a system built on uniqueness, you do not fail loudly. You fail later in silence when someone finally lays two twins on the same desk. Two notes, one number. Not fake versus real. Real versus real. If the bank cannot tell which note is authorized, it must treat every note of that series as contaminated. And once the public hears that, they will do the thing every banking system fears most. They will run. The bank now has hours, maybe days, to choose between two disasters. Say nothing and bleed invisibly until the duplicates explode in daylight, or reveal the truth and watch trust evaporate in real time. Which disaster do you pick when both are already guaranteed? And what happens to a country when its own money becomes the enemy? December 6th, 1925. The bank's governor calls a board meeting in Lisbon. They confirm what you already know. It is nearly impossible to distinguish authorized notes from Reis's notes because, physically, they are the same. So the board chooses the nuclear option. Withdraw every 500 escudo, Vasco da Gama note in circulation and exchange them for new, larger format notes, except that secrecy is impossible. On December 7th, the bank announces the withdrawal of the Vasco da Gama 500 escudo series, Plate 2, after duplicate serial numbers surfaced in Porto. This is where the story stops being clever and starts being human. Lines form outside banks across the country. People clutch stacks of paper they earned honestly, worked overtime for, saved in jars and envelopes, and are now being told that the paper might be poison. A bank run does not look dramatic up close. It looks like fear standing in a queue. Mothers holding children, shopkeepers leaving their counters, old men who remember the last crisis and swore they would not live through another one. The exchange deadline is set, shifted, extended, because the country is trying to outrun its own panic. Newspapers report the decision on Monday, December 7th. A grace period is fixed to expire December 22nd, then extended to December 26th. Rumors outpace every official statement, and in the larger cities, police deal with rioting near major banks. By the end of the exchange window, 115,000 notes have been withdrawn. That number is chilling, not because it is huge, but because it hints at what remains uncounted. Investigators trace the perfect notes back to Waterloo and Sons. The printers confirm they produced the notes because they did. And now the impossible becomes a police file with names. Reis tries to survive the only way he knows: motion. He hesitates, then pivots, then denies, refusing to believe the stage is collapsing beneath him, even as the boards splinter. But within days, arrest warrants fly and the money is seized. His co-conspirators scatter. Meringue is detained in The Hague. Hennies is arrested in Lisbon. Jose Bandera tries to disappear, but disappearing requires a system, and Reis's system is the thing being dismantled. Reis was tried in May 1930 before a Lisbon court. In the proceedings last week, he maintains that his operation was beneficial to the Portuguese economy, a defense so brazen it lands somewhere between genius and delusion. He is convicted and sentenced to 20 years. He is released in 1945 and dies in 1955, bankrupt. The undertaker's son exits the story the same way he entered, broke, and one bill away from disaster. The country does not just punish Reis, it sues the printer. The Bank of Portugal's case against Waterloo becomes one of the most complex commercial trials in English legal history, stretching through the British courts for years. The central question is devastating in its simplicity. When a security printer produces real notes on fraudulent orders, Who pays? The case culminates in a House of Lords decision in April 1932, awarding £610,000 in damages, a sum large enough to cripple the firm. Waterloo never fully recovers. Its assets are acquired by De La Rue in 1961, and its name fades from the industry it once defined. And Portugal? The crisis shatters confidence in institutions already fraying. In the years that follow, the political system collapses into a military dictatorship, and a new regime builds its legitimacy on order and discipline, fed partly by the moral certainty that the old system was incompetent. Reis does not cause the dictatorship, but he hands it a recruiting poster. That is the final irony. Reis does not steal money the way most thieves do. He steals the idea that money is protected by something solid. He shows you it is protected by clerks, ledgers, and habits. By a signature, by a missing letter, by one number that should never repeat. And if you are thinking that was 1925, here is the uncomfortable part. The physical notes Reis injected were, in every material sense, real. The only thing that made them not real was the story attached to them. Change the story, and the paper becomes true again. So the question is not whether this could happen now. The question is, when you look at the money in your own hand, what exactly is it made of? Money is not paper. It is permission. A signature you never see on a document you will never touch, supported by a chain of trust in which every link assumes the one before it was sound. Reis proved that if you can forge the permission, you can forge reality. Not with a better printing press or superior chemistry, but with a notary stamp, 3 consular seals, and the universal human instinct to believe that someone, somewhere, must have already checked. And once you understand that, walls stop looking solid. They start looking like seams. If you want to see what happens when someone finds that same kind of weakness, not inside a system, but inside an entire justice system, and exploits it again and again for decades, slipping through bars, disguises, and even maximum security walls, that story is already waiting for you.